You know I love a good portable emulator. You know I love the Nintendo Switch. You put them together, and how could you go wrong? This is the Powkiddy Q90, otherwise referred to as the RG350, or sometimes referred to as the LD300 like it says on the box. This is yet another cheap Chinese portable emulation device, but this time it's made to look like a Nintendo Switch Lite. You see the similarities here? Is the aesthetic really worth the purchase though? Does it stack up well against the other portable emulation options? Or, you know, an actual Switch Lite? This thing plays Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, SNES, Game Gear, Genesis, Master System, Neo Geo Pocket, WonderSwan, PC, arcade, and PS1 games. But don't get your hopes up, because it doesn't play most of these well. My current favorite portable emulator is the Pocket Go, and they share a lot of similarities. For example, they work on a very similar operating system. A lot of the emulators on here are the same, but they just run a little bit cheaper. The whole draw to this thing is its appearance. It's made to look like a turquoise Switch Lite. Obviously, it doesn't play Nintendo Switch games. That would be stealing, and I would call the cops on you. It does look nice. The turquoise is significantly more blue than the Switch Lite, and a little lighter. It's even got the plus and minus buttons that the Switch Lite has. The minus button is used to access the menu in most emulators. The plus button isn't used in any emulators, and I actually don't think it even works at all, which is a problem because I instinctively hit it as the start button all the time, even though start and select are down here. It's very annoying. The unit also has one shoulder button on each side. It charges via USB-C. It has a volume slider, but you can also change the volume by holding select and pressing A or B, which will mess with the volume slider. There is no brightness slider, but you can adjust the brightness by pressing select and either of the shoulder buttons. This is useful when you're playing in the sun or playing in bed, which is probably more likely these days. There's also a micro SD card slot on the bottom. Do not delete the stuff on here because that's what makes this whole thing work. There's a power button on the left side. The buttons themselves are squishy, including the D-pad, which is unfortunate. The thumbstick gets stuck often and is pretty much entirely useless for that reason. It feels exactly like the Pocket Ghost thumbstick, which is also very bad. The screen is 320 by 240 pixels, which is slightly taller than a Game Boy Advance screen. It's a 3-inch IPS display. It's a very similar screen to the new Pocket Go, but it's not as bright, the colors aren't as vibrant, and there's some screen tearing, which is probably more of a software issue than a hardware issue, but we'll get to that. This thing is clearly cheaply made. There wasn't a lot of care put into optimizing the software. Now, a lot of these portable emulation devices come with games pre-installed, which is wrong and illegal. If you get one of these things, you should delete all of the games that are on there and only install the ones that you actually own. First, you're gonna be stealing games. Next, you're gonna be stealing cars and doing drugs. This emulator comes with a lot of games. Some are randomly the Japanese versions. Some are bootleg not games that never existed, like Super Mario World for the NES, or Mortal Kombat 5 for the Genesis, Amy and Sonic, which is actually Mighty the Armadillo, and Jackie Chan plays soccer for the Master System. Wait, no, that's a different game. There's a lot of good stuff on here already, but it wasn't exactly curated very well. So consider this a bring your own ROMs device, which is how you should look at every console anyway. Loading your own ROMs on here is simple enough. You just dump them into the corresponding ROM folder. Moving Game Boy Advance saves is also just as simple. Just dump them into the Game Boy Advance ROMs folder and make sure the same file is using the same name as the corresponding ROM file. so you can carry your Pokemon save over between portable emulators or from your computer. This process is a little bit easier than it was on the Pocket Go. Hey, look at that! 1 point for the Q90. Now let's look at the emulators this thing has. There's slight screen tearing across all of the emulators. Some have it worse than others, and some are virtually non-existent. It's not nearly as bad as the original Pocket Go with the original firmware, and it's not a deal breaker, it's just something to note. Game Boy runs good. The aspect ratio is stretched by default. You can change this in the settings, but you have to change it every single time. There's also no control settings, so you're stuck with the sideways A and B buttons. Game Boy Advance probably runs the best out of all of the emulators on here. It seems like this OS, or just these categories of emulators, really target the Game Boy Advance. I mean, it's a similar form factor. The full aspect ratio is close to normal Game Boy Advance, but slightly taller, so switching that to scaled 3x2 gives you a better experience. What's unfortunate is that none of your settings save in these emulators, so you're gonna have to change these settings every single time you load up an emulator, further proving that this thing was not optimized at all to run these emulators. Actually, it looks like Game Boy Advance does save the settings. Look at that. I still like the Pocket Go more for Game Boy Advance because it has a fast forward button, but the Q90 plays Game Boy Advance games pretty flawlessly. No noticeable screen tearing, so if you want this as a Pokemon machine, sure, why not? The Famicom games take a long time to load up because there are 713 of them. Why? And they run okay. It has some weird frame skips. Super Famicom, or SNES, runs like absolute trash. And I'm not sure why. Super Mario World feels like it has input lag. Yoshi's Island says it's the Game Boy Advanced version, but it's not, and it runs like shit. Mega Man X is choppy as all hell, and not the normal kind of slowdown choppy. It's like actually choppy. I had a nice little talk with Elliot from the Retro Future the other day, and he discovered that setting the frame skip to 60/1 will fix Mega Man X. It won't have that choppiness at all anymore, and it runs perfectly fine. Unfortunately, this doesn't fix Super Mario World, and no amount of frame skip is gonna fix Yoshi's Island. 60/4 kind of works. It makes it a lot more consistent, but it still looks like a slideshow. Just don't buy this thing if you want to play any Super Nintendo games. Anyway, Game Gear runs okay. I mean, Game Gear always kind of looks like trash anyway. Master System is basically the same. Genesis runs surprisingly very good. Everything I tested ran perfect aside from some very minor screen tearing. Considering how fast these games run normally, that's totally acceptable. I never would have tested the Neo Geo games on here because who cares? And I also never look at other people's reviews of stuff before I do my own because I don't want to be influenced by their review. But I did watch the Retro Futures review of this thing, and he said that the Neo Geo games ran like trash. So I tested it, and they do in fact run like trash.
Bob, are you using my footage again?
Did you hear that? PC Engine is all sorts of wacky because the controls don't seem to map right. WonderSwan is WonderSwan, and arcade games run great. This thing also plays PlayStation 1 games, which is kind of a big deal, but it only has one shoulder button on each side, so already it's not gonna work. And the hardware just isn't beefy enough to play some of the more power-intensive PS1 games.
There's supposed to be people there.
Don't get this thing for PS1 games. Powkitty is selling this on their website for $40. I also found it on Amazon for $50. I don't know who the seller is, I just found it searching. I would recommend getting it on Amazon. Shipping will be way easier. It probably won't have to go through customs, and Amazon will be liable for any issues that spring up. I'd say this thing is about as good as the old Pocket Go. The old Pocket Go is much smaller, It runs games at about the same quality, but has some screen tearing issues if you have the old firmware. These issues were supposed to be resolved in a new firmware update, but updating the firmware is a bit of a process. This old Pocket Go is on RetroMimi for $33, and the new one, my favorite portable emulator, is $66. Both are unavailable on Amazon right now, which is unfortunate because I'd recommend getting these on there too. Now, I keep saying that this one's my favorite, but I have not tried out the RG350. Wait. I thought they called this the RG350. Everybody keeps talking about how great the RG350 is, so I'll have to buy that and see how that is compared to this. But that's for another video. Between all three of these, I still think the Pocket Go wins. It runs everything better. The screen is nicer. The emulators are more optimized. And it has fast-forward hotkeys in some of the emulators. And it has L2 and R2 buttons for PS1 games. It is the most expensive of the three, but I think the price is justified by the quality. The Q90 is really only useful if you just have to save 26 bucks and you absolutely need something that looks kind of like a Switch Lite. You don't need that at all. But again, I'd wait for these things to pop up on Amazon. It's just a much safer way to make sure that you're actually gonna get the product. For now, the Pocket Go is gonna remain in my bag, and this is gonna live in my closet probably forever. So what do you guys think about the Powkiddy Q90 or this bootleg looking Switch Lite? Is this something that you would ever want for any reason? Really, the only benefit I see to this thing is that it's available. That's. Do you have a portable emulator yourself, or are portable emulators even something that you ever think about? Leave it in the comments below. Add me on Twitter, and all of this other social media garbage. I'm working on a video for my personal channel, youtube.com/BobWulff. That's kind of like a. How do I put this? It's kind of like a vlogumentary of the coronavirus here in New York City, because it's getting real. So it'll be done sometime around when this video goes up. So go over to subscribe if it's not there. If it's there, it'll be in a card up there and at the end slate. Also, check out the Retro Future on his second channel. We talked for like a half an hour and it was great. So if you want to see me and him just chat about dumb stuff, YouTube stuff and gaming related stuff, go over to his second channel. I'll link it over here too. But of course, we got new videos and live streams all the time. Our schedule is usually in a pin tweet over on our Twitter. We got Wulff live every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time here on YouTube, where we can talk to each other. And if you go over to twitch.tv/WulffDen and click that notification bell so you know when I go live, we can hang out. I've been playing Animal Crossing. It's been a really fun time. But of course, the most important thing that you can do and the easiest thing to help support this channel is just subscribe. Thank you kindly. And share this video with a friend who's into this new age retro gaming hardware kind of stuff, or is in the market for a new emulator. Maybe they could avoid this one. Thank you guys very much. Have yourself a good week. Wash your hands.